Yo, what's good, YouTube? What's good, Celtics Nation? Welcome back to the Vitamin C's. As usual, I'm your boy Adam Taylor. As usual, I'm joined by Mr. Tim Shields. And as usual, before we get into this thing, I like saying usual, comes out smooth. Before we get into this, I want you all to go over to where the subscribe button is, hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, share this with all your Celtics friends and family. Word of mouth is how we can grow quickest. If you have social media, share it on social media. If you don't have social media, get social media. It's fantastic. Today we're looking at sellers. On the last episode, if anybody took the time to watch the last episode of Vitamin C's, we were looking at teams that were potential buyers around the trade deadline. Now we're looking at teams that are potential sellers. So teams that have a player or players that could interest the Celtics and that could be interested in doing a deal with the Celtics, whether that be for some veteran pieces to put them over the top, which isn't usually likely with selling teams, and more common is some young dudes that they want to, like maybe somebody really likes the idea of having Aaron Nesmith and actually giving him playing time. Could you believe people actually give young players playing time, bro?
It is a mystical idea that just does not exist in Boston.
Like, it just makes no sense, right? Like young guys, if we play them, they're going to get better.
It's a crazy concept, isn't it?
Crazy concept, dude. I mean, Ime Udoka just this. Here's Udoka's head here. And the concept is coming over on the curvature of his head.
Brad's around the same level. It's a similar problem they've had for the past couple seasons, and that's kind of where they're at right now. So,
very disappointed. Very disappointed.
Me too. Absolutely.
In fact, and it is legit that parent thing, right? I'm not mad, but I'm disappointed, and that always hurts more. So if you're watching and your name's Udoka or Stevens, just know we're not mad at you. We are disappointed. So let's jump into this. As usual, my boy Tim's going to lead us in with the teams that he's got listed as the sellers. Tim's the trade guy, loves to talk trades. You want X's and O's? I'm your guy. You want some statistical analysis? I'm your guy. You want some general talk where I just reel off some crazy concepts about how to improve a team? I'm your guy. Want trade stuff? Tim's your guy. Cap stuff? Tim's your guy. Other stuff? Neither of us are your guy. Go for it, Tim.
So, as we said, last time we were talking about some of the buyers. Now we're going to delve into some of the sellers. One little overlap there is the Pacers, which I'll get to. There's actually been some conflicting reports coming out of Indiana. I saw something the other day, so I'll pull that up. But one clear one to me should be the Pistons. I think the Pistons right now are in this weird spot where you just drafted Cade Cunningham. You've got some good pieces in place, but some of those pieces don't line up with what your window is going to be. You're on the younger side for the most part, or at least that's the direction you should be heading into. I mean, you've got a young star in the making with Cade Cunningham, and you went ahead and the big target that everyone's talking about is Jeremy Grant. Based on what his money was, I think he got a 3-year, $60 million deal. And right now his cap hit is around $20 million. He's a piece that makes a lot of sense for a team that's looking to add a third piece. I don't know if he's necessarily what I would call like a third star, but I would probably say that he's like a high-level starter. I don't know what the cost would be. So it's a matter of trying to see what they can manage to do with that kind of player. I think Boston should also potentially look at a reunion with Kelly Olynyk, who has a cap hit of about $12.8 million. He adds a little bit more shooting size. Not a great defender, so that kind of hurts the chances there, but he has familiarity with the Celtics. Obviously, he was a fan favorite here for a while. Everybody remembers Game 7, Kelly Olynyk against the Wizards. So those are the two targets that I would look at with the Pistons. I don't know if there's anybody else that you had on your mind there.
Nah, man, those are the two guys that I've got right in my head. Now, with Jeremy Grant, I think one of the main things that stands out for me is he specifically chose to go to Detroit. Like that. He made a conscious decision to go to Detroit for multiple reasons. And I think that when we're thinking about, like, would they trade him? I'm not sure how the optics come back on Detroit at that point, right? Like, at the moment, Detroit are bad. They're bad with Grant. They'll be bad without Grant. The difference is you're doing right by a guy that went out of his way to come to a smaller market team, knowing that they weren't going to be a good team when there was clearly contending teams that were willing to offer him some money. Did he get a little bit more going to Detroit? Of course he did. He's gone to Detroit. Nobody wants to go to Detroit. They have to pay. But I think there's still a world where the Pistons are like, you know what? we could get some young pieces back for Jeremy Grant. And I think there's contending teams out there, or teams that feel like they're on the precipice of being a contending team, that wouldn't mind giving up some young pieces for Jeremy Grant. Obviously, the contract makes things difficult. You do have to include some other veteran pieces just for salary matching. Anybody thinking, well, the Celtics can use that TPE, you can't add a TPE in. It's not like you can add it to players going out. So whoever's coming back has to be absorbed in. So I feel like that deal's unlikely. It's possible, but I just feel like, could they want an Al Horford who's a solid vet, but is it worth doing? So Kelly Olynyk just makes a bit more sense for me. And here's why. Do my best Kevin Hart impression now. I'll tell you why. So I'll tell you what. I think that the Celtics are going to slowly transform into and I'm going to be writing about this over the weekend, so stay tuned on CelticsBlog.com. If anybody don't know anywhere, if anyone don't know where I write, you can find me at heavy.com, Celtics.com, CelticsBlog.com, CelticsBlog.com. You're home for all Celtics stuff. You can find me at Odds-Checker US. You can find me here, there, everywhere. But I'll be writing about this for CelticsBlog.com over the weekend, how I believe the Celtics could start to transform into a point center team where the majority of the offense runs through the big men, specifically Robert Williams. If you do that, if the team do look to go down that route, you need a replacement for Al Horford. So you have two options. You go out there and try and bring in a Domantas Sabonis or somebody on a bit of a lower tier in terms of a facilitator in Jusuf Nurkic. Or you start getting some stopgaps. Now, there's not many big guys that are also playmakers, especially not to where you can confidently run an offense through them, 6 out of 10 possessions, 6 out of every 10 possessions. Kelly Olynyk could be a good plug guy there, where you put him on off the bench and ask 4 offensive possessions out of 10 to come through Olynyk as a dribble handoff guy in the mid post, as somebody that's setting some screen assists around the perimeter, running some Miami sets with him, and Miami sets where you go into a handoff. So you got Chicago where it's a handoff into a screen, and a Miami is where it's a screen into a handoff. Is that right? Yeah, it is. So you could have Kelly Olynyk there. So I think that you've got an opportunity there if that is something that Udoka wants to build upon. And I know that during a recent press conference when Jared Weiss asked him about using the bigs as more facilitators, Udoka said he likes that because it's non-conventional. It's hard. Teams don't really know how to defend that too tough right now. Maybe you go and get yourself a Kelly Olynyk as a long-term answer to Al Horford. The only reason I don't believe that happens, personally, is because you've still got another year of Al Horford. Why would you bring Olynyk in now? You would wait and then try and bring in a Nurkic or a Sabonis. Obviously, if Sabonis becomes available, you make that deal. So I can definitely see a world where the Pistons move on from Olynyk, especially because he hasn't played much this year. He's been injured and in and out. And I can see a world where they move on from Jeremy Grant. I just don't think that either of those players end up wearing green.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing with Jeremy Grant is when he originally was going to Detroit, part of the reason why he chose Detroit was to play for a black coach. So now with Ime Udoka in Boston, maybe that narrative switches. But again,
it was black ownership as well. Don't forget that it was a black ownership.
Well, then there's that whole the wrinkle there. But regardless, what you said with the cap stuff, it's really difficult for them to try and figure out that sort of contract fitting under the cap without moving on, like you said, from an Al Horford or kind of slapping a bunch of money together in order to make it work. And it just doesn't make sense unless they're trying to take that swing. He is a guy that they were connected to before. It was someone that they were looking at the deadline before, and they were also looking at in free agency. And there's a couple other guys we're going to talk about during this session that fall under that umbrella of previous ties to Boston in terms of trade interest or free agency interest.
I just want to clear this up. It wasn't black ownership. It was a black front office. I just double-checked the quote that he had.
Okay.
So it was front office. He wanted to work under a black coach in a black front office, which he is now doing. And that is what I'm saying. He had very specific reasons in joining Detroit to move on from him when he made those decisions for more than basketball reasons. Is the optics from that they wouldn't sit well with me personally. Do you know what I mean? I'd be like, yo, Detroit are gnarly for doing that. So, yeah.
Well, other than that, I do like Kelly Olynyk as well, and I think he still provides a little bit of spacing based on his shot. I think he's still a defensive liability, so that would be something I would be concerned about. But other than that, I think we should move on to the next team.
I like
that
Olynyk's
being said,
hair.
The flow is still there. I'm glad that he still got it going.
The
But
locks, dude.
I think we should probably transfer into the Pacers, considering that we talked a little bit about Domantas Sabonis. So specifically with the Pacers, it's interesting because we talked a little bit about them being buyers last session, and I know that was something where it seems like they're more of sellers at this point. Looks like they might be trying to sell off some of these bigger contracts in order to get picks and young players in to start that rebuild. But according to an article I saw, granted from Clutch Points, but it is talking about Kevin O'Connor. Kevin O'Connor reportedly for The Ringer said the Pacers are eyeing some intriguing targets who could help them win right away. Indiana will listen to offers with a lot of draft picks, but the team's preference is to receive players who can help them regain playoff status, according to league sources. Think about theoretical trade targets such as De'Aaron Fox, Ben Simmons, Pascal Siakam, guys who are of near equal value to Sabonis and Turner, or even upgrades. So I don't know how that changes the situation with the Pacers. I know right now in terms of the quote unquote big three that they would be moving on from, whether it be Karis LeVert, Miles Turner, or Domantas Sabonis, all three of those guys do not fit under the trade exception. You're talking about either moving on from Al Horford, which means you're going to probably need to throw a lot of picks and maybe a couple young guys into that deal just to get the Pacers to bite. But if they are actually trying to do a retooling, I'm wondering if a piece like a Dennis Schroeder interests them, or maybe a Josh Richardson. And I don't know what exactly they'd be willing to give up in return. Now,
So I think. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were done.
No, the last couple things I would say is there are a few guys that I would consider going after on their team that would fit into that TPE. A couple that would interest me that sort of fit the mold of what Boston's trying to get out of their bench would be either Jeremy Lamb, I believe it's Justin Holiday, and Torrey Craig.
So I like Torrey Craig. I haven't seen enough of him to have a definitive opinion. It's not like I can sit here and be like, Torrey Craig's going to come and give you X, Y, and Z. You know, I could regurgitate a box score, but anybody can Google that. So I'll hold my hands up and be like, I have not seen enough Torrey Craig to have an opinion there. I do like the small sample size I have seen of him. I do like it. But again, I'd be lying. I don't want to be disingenuous. Justin Holiday, again, I haven't seen enough as a sample size. And who was the third person you gave us?
Jeremy Lamb.
Yeah, I like Jeremy Lamb. I just don't think, like, is he good? Yeah. Is he better than Josh Richardson? I mean, the version of Josh Richardson we're seeing right now for Boston, is he better? Maybe, but I doubt it. I don't feel like he is. Maybe he might be a like for like, but Richardson's fit is proven right now for the Celtics. Jeremy Lamb would be a gamble. I think that, you know, if I'm the Pacers and I'm doing a retooling, in my head, I'm going to know that I want one of these three guys to stick around and I want to flip the other two to give me two different stars around them, right? If we're being quite honest, that means Sabonis is likely the guy that stays. But Sabonis is also, you see, Indiana are in this weird position where they're like Boston. The guy they want to keep is their most tradable guy. Same as, like, you know, Celtics trade anyone but Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. But if you really need to blow it up and you need big roster changes, it has to be Jaylen Brown in any deal. And I feel like they could get good pieces back for Miles Turner. They could get good pieces back for Karis LeVert. But if you want a game changer, you want to bring in somebody that's a potential like cornerstone for the next 5 to 10 years, it's you're moving on from Sabonis, but then you keep Turner. You get what I'm saying? So they're in this weird position themselves. I don't see the Celtics moving on from Jaylen Brown for Domantas Sabonis. I genuinely feel, I'm not even sure, does a Domantas Sabonis Jason Tatum duo work better than a Jaylen Brown Jason Tatum duo? I'm not sure it does. I'm not sure it does. I think maybe marginally, maybe the fit is marginally better because it's, you know, two completely different roles with two completely different aspects of the game, whereas JB and JT do have that overlap. But I don't feel like it's such a jump that you're like, yo, yeah, we can get this done for JB, for Sabonis, you know? So, I mean, I'd like a world where if Ime Udoka's really cemented on running a double big lineup, a Sabonis, Rob Williams, 4 and 5 would be ridiculous. And then you would seriously get point center play and the playmaking would be very diverse. So I understand it. Is there a world where it could happen? Yeah. Is it something I think is likely? Not at all.
Yeah. And I feel like again, like you said, getting back to Sabonis specifically, he is their most valuable trade piece as well. And there's definitely going to be some interest. I don't know from a Philly perspective, I don't know who they would trade for out of those three guys, whether it be Miles Turner, Domantas Sabonis, or Karis LeVert. Like, I just don't see that making sense unless you're going for LeVert, but you would need multiple pieces back if you're giving up Ben Simmons. And I know that we've talked about his value being
You've
low,
got
but it just doesn't make sense.
You've got the injury concerns with Levert as well. Obviously, he had that scare when they
The
found that,
cancer. Yeah.
yeah, and then he's had some injuries since then. He had some injuries before then. I just think that Philly, in my opinion, I think that Philly are a little bit tentative about adding a second big next to Joel
Yeah.
after the clusterfuck of the Al Horford, like that whole debacle. So I genuinely don't think that we're going to see that happen. It's a possibility for sure. But yeah, I think Philly, for that reason, I don't think that Ben Simmons ends up there. I just unless the Sixers bring in a third team and somebody else gets Sabonis or Turner, Simmons moves over, and then you bring in somebody else to get a piece that you want. That's very likely, you know. But as a 1-for-1 straight swap, yeah, they ain't buying it, man. They ain't buying it. I don't know how Sabonis and Embiid would work together, and I definitely don't know how Turner and Embiid would work together. And you don't trade Ben Simmons for a Karis LeVert. You just don't do it.
No, I agree. And I think with that, I think we want to move on to the next target. I think let's hit on the Rockets. We talked a little bit about the Rockets, and I think they're a team right now, clearly, as one of the worst teams in terms of record in the league. And they're also dealing with what seems to be some kind of locker room issue. I don't know how deep it goes exactly, but recent reports said that both Christian Wood and Kevin Porter Jr. were fined and I believe suspended by the team for at least one game due to an altercation with a disagreement between, I think, the assistant coach and the players, something that happened mid-game. So I don't know about you, but there were ties between the Celtics and Christian Wood before. At one point during the free agency, before he signed that contract with the Rockets, Boston was supposedly trying to clear space and set them up to sign him in free agency. That ended up not happening. And Kevin Porter Jr., as we all know, had some legal trouble when he was in Cleveland. There were some concerns about attitude. Cleveland ended up moving on from him. He ended up in Houston, and he's kind of blossomed into something that I don't think a lot of people saw him developing like that. But now there seems to be issues in terms of friction. So I don't know if that's something that you worry about in Boston about trying to add those pieces. But for what it's worth, based on Kevin Porter Jr.'s contract, I think he's up for an option for next season. Right now, his cap hit is just under 1.8 million. Christian Woods is just under 13.7 million. You could literally fit both of those guys under the TPE as currently constituted. And based on the recent issues with them, apparently on the sidelines, that could play into Boston's hand if you're trying to make a trade. And clearly, Houston is pretty much open for business. Like, they're going to be active at the deadline in terms of selling pieces away. They want to bottom out. They want to tank. They want other capital, whether it be young players or draft picks. This is an opportunity where, hey, if you just want to take a dice roll on these guys, one of these guys that you were tied to before, it just makes sense.
I'm just waiting to pull a face there. So I do want to say, Christian Wood, Steven Silas sat him the other day and didn't play him for pretty much the entire of the game. Why? Because he wasn't happy with Christian Wood's execution and effort levels during practice and during the beginning of the game. So Christian Wood didn't get to play. Now, if you're not getting minutes on the Houston Rockets when you're meant to be their best player because your attitude stinks, I'm not sure how desirable you are as a trade target. Sure, you can hit the free, you're a stretch big, you're averaging a double-double right now. I get it. You're talented. But for a team like Boston, where there's already issues around not being prepared, not executing consistently, not coming out with the right intensity, do you really want to add a guy that's getting sat for like games by the Rockets? Like, come on now, the Rockets. So I can see it happening, but I also see a big red flag there. And it's similar with Kevin Porter Jr. The only difference is Kevin Porter Jr. plays in a position that Boston's sorely needing upgrading, and that's the point guard. Kevin Porter Jr. can score. He can distribute. talent level is unquestionable. I think he could be a 24.6 assist for 4 rebound a night type of guard for you. He's got good size, good handles. He's a live wire though, you know what I mean? Like he's the type of guy that, but he's going through some troubles. I think like there's a really good piece out on the Dream Shake, which is SB Nation's Houston Rockets page, basically saying, look, man, people should be trying to help Porter Jr. rather than continually point the finger at him. I kind of agree there. Obviously, this guy's going through some stuff. Give him the help he needs rather than just keep, washing your hands of him and it's the next team's problem. Talent-wise, it's all there. If Boston wanted to take a shot at him, knowing that it's going to be a roller coaster, I could get on board because of how small the contract is, because of how cheap his next contract will likely be due to those same concerns. But I'm also very aware of you're going to come in and it's like dropping a grenade into that locker room. You just don't know what's going to happen. I just think the talent level's there, and he'd be the perfect buy low candidate. And that's what Houston did. Houston bought low on him last year. We rewarded them last season with, let me have a look. Last season, he rewarded them with 16.6 points per game, 6.3 assists, and 4 rebounds per game. That's what he rewarded the Houston Rockets with in 26 games last season. This season, he's giving them 12.8, 5.7, and 4.2. So he's right around that 6, that 5-6 rebounds a night, 4-5 assists a night. And I think in a system like the Celtics, where there's more spacing available to him, they're going to run a lot of drag screens. They're going to run a lot of staggers, give him some open looks that he's not really getting with that Rockets team. It's a very viable 24, 25 point a game with, closing in on that 8 rebounds, 5-6 assists type. No, sorry. Yeah, 5-6 assists type of nights, not 8 rebounds. 4 rebounds would be acceptable. We're not talking Russell Westbrook here. So I do like Kevin Porter Jr. a lot. I just have the same concerns with him as what I do with Christian Wood.
Yeah, I think the one differentiator, as you said, he's going to be at a position of need for Boston. And right now, I think if you're looking at the situation of trying to buy low on a guy who is on the extremely young side, who fits the timeline of your 2 key guys and could potentially become a third star if he develops correctly and in the right system, I don't see too many reasons why not to. It just really comes down to, are you willing to take that risk on the locker room right now? And is the cost worth the risk? And I think if it's a low enough cost, if it's like a pick or maybe just a pick in some filler, then maybe you consider it. I mean, Christian Wood's on the older side. And again, if there are attitude and effort concerns, then yeah, that's absolutely a problem. But I think, honestly, if Kevin Porter Jr. came to Boston, you have the Jays who are established, who are growing and learning as well. Both of them are developing as leaders, and you have Marcus Smart there as well. And I think Marcus Smart, like taking Kevin Porter Jr. under his wing, I think that could be fantastic for him. I think that could personally be great because I feel like he is the epitome of what you want a Celtic to be like in terms of culture and effort and intensity. So
the problem is Smart can't control his temper, bro.
Well, and again, you need to. There are other factors at play. So.
True or false? When Marcus Smart was out with a hand laceration, did you or did you not? First thing, he's hit something.
Oh no, I saw it happen during the game.
You lie.
No, I saw it. He went over to the sideline. They were sealing it up.
Yeah, I saw that. Because he hit someone. No, you know what I'm saying.
He hustled on the ground. I know what you're saying. We all remember the picture frame incident. That was bad.
Know what I'm saying. I'm just if I'm worried about a guy's temperament, if I'm worried about his commitment, Marcus Smart is the guy I want watching that guy. Because Marcus Smart's going to make sure that you're committed. He's going to hold you super accountable, and he's not going to back down when you try and push back. If I'm worried about a guy's temperament, I'm not letting Marcus Smart be that guy. You know what I mean? Like Marcus would be there, like, yeah, man, let it out. Yeah,
go full Rambo.
Yeah, go dark side, man. Feed that demon. Yeah, he'll be egging you on. Like, yo, what did he say to you, bro? Don't let that. So I'd much rather like an Al Horford type guy be that vet.
Just lo and behold.
Lo and behold, they have an Al Horford type guy that is named. Wait for it, Al Horford. Crazy how that works. Who's the last team you've got?
Well, I got 2 more, and let's hit on the big one. I feel like this is an obvious one, and a team that just gave Boston some trouble. The Orlando Magic.
Okay, so the only name you're going to throw at me, because the only name we're going to reasonably be available to get, is Terrence Ross.
Yeah, I think that's a given. He just torched Boston. He's on a reasonable deal, 12.5 mil. He slides perfectly into that TPE in terms of money. And it's
I
something
think
that you
they'd
could
really
use.
like an Aaron Neesmith as well.
Yeah, and that might hurt, but again, you're not
It's
giving
not
these
going to
young
hurt.
guys any minutes. You're not giving
No.
them any minutes. So you kind
I
of
mean,
have
I
to pick
really
and
want
choose
Cole
here.
Anthony, but we're not going to get him.
Oh, no
That hurts
way.
me. It hurts me every time I see him play. I'm just like, man, I really want to watch you play more. But yeah, I think Terrence Ross for Aaron Neesmith in a second
I can
should get
get with
it
that.
done. I think it'll get it done. Or 2 seconds. I don't want to give up a first if you're getting a lottery pick from last season.
That's true too. And another thing I guess what to consider is just to see what kind of contract continuing off of Ross's. It looks like he has one more year left at
That's
12.5
fine.
mil.
Yeah,
So,
give him to me. I'll take him right now.
I
What's the
mean,
other team you got?
the other team that I have is the Blazers. And I know that you talked about Yusuf Nurkic, but another guy that I would consider
Please be
who is
Rocco.
Oh, it's Rocco. You already knew it was Rocco. We talked about this. Robert Covington makes a lot of sense. He's making around 12.98, so just under 13 million. Again, another contract that fits perfectly into the trade exception. And he fits a lot of needs of this team.
Excuse me.
He helps with spacing. He's a good 3-point shooter. He helps on defense. He's definitely an effort guy. In terms of a glue guy, he also makes a lot of sense. He's the ideal wing that you could have on the bench as a rotation piece. You can start him if you need to. You can run him at the 3 or the 4. So I think it makes sense. And the Blazers are obviously a team that is consistently underachieving, and they're kind of looking at potentially the last year of Damian Lillard being with Portland. Like they're looking that in the face. So
Bye
sayonara,
bye.
Sailor.
Sayonara. Yeah, if anyone follows me on social media, you've seen it for 2 off seasons in a row. I've been asking for Robert Covington. I think that he's a guy that you bring in, you add some solid, like you solidify your perimeter defense. I understand now that Romeo Langford's emergence as a defender really helps. Romeo just isn't the same level of finisher at the moment as what Rocco is, especially from the perimeter. I think Romeo can get there. An extra season of Robert Covington. If you can have, imagine being able to pair Josh Richardson and Robert Covington on the perimeter off the bench, and then have if you've upgraded your point guard, your 1 through 3 is Smart, Richardson, Covington, and then insert 4 Grant Williams, insert 5 Al Horford next season. That is an amazing bench unit. So I'd be all in on having that bench unit. I think that would be fantastic. I don't know what you'd have to give up to get him though, and I don't think the Blazers even entertain that idea until the end of the season when they really know what Dame Lillard's going to do. And if they are going to blow it up, I think you should go a bit bigger and try and get yourself a Norman Powell. Personally,
And I know you're on Powell big time. You talked about that before, potentially being a target. I just don't know in terms of money, I could pull him up. I mean, one thing I wanted to mention about Rocco before we talk Norman Powell, and I could pull his numbers too. Rocco's in the last year of his contract. So there is a little bit of a chance there because he is an expiring contract and you are Portland. Do you wait until the offseason to have all of a sudden Dame Lillard be like, well, I don't know if I want to be here? Well, okay, if that's the situation, then what makes Robert Covington stay? He's
yeah, but
probably
at the
got
same time, like if you trading away one of your better players now, while CJ Miles is most likely not CJ McCollum, sorry, is most likely out for the season, or at least a large part of it due to that collapse lung. Trading away Covington now is basically telling Lillard, you're good to go at the end of the year, bro. You know what I mean? So there's reasons for trading Covington now, and there's reasons for playing the waiting game. Worst case scenario, Covington leaves for nothing, but you open up that cap space to be able to try and pick up, there's always going to be a young guy that didn't really click on his first team. Is he on the free agent market? You can get him for a good value, and then you try and build up that trade value that way. I think that's going to be a way that Portland have to go. They don't really strike me as a team that are going to build through the draft right now, especially if they're trying to appease Lillard. So they're in a weird position, man. Really weird position. But if Lillard does go and they decide to blow it off, Boston, in my opinion, Norman Powell is the guy you go for.
and he makes sense in terms of money too. 15.5 million right now, and he just signed a contract extension for 5 years. So he's going to be locked up through 2025, 2026.
Yeah,
So
because
and it ramps up too.
you don't rebuild around Powell.
No.
Powell's there as a high level complementary piece. And
Bingo.
if you don't have players to complement, well, what's your point now? You have no reason to be on the roster. We might as well try and bring in a couple of pieces that we can try and develop or try and flip further down the line, or somebody we truly believe could become a borderline top 3 contributor to this team. I don't know who they'd think that is on the Celtics, but there you go. So that pretty much wraps us up. We've hit that 30-minute mark. We like to keep these nice and short. We like to keep these nice and sweet. Before we go, make sure to, if you've got this far, congratulations. Most people don't always get this far. If you did, we're very grateful. As you can see on the screen, it says subscribe for your regular dose of Celtics content. So, do you know what I want them to do, Tim?
Smash that like button, click subscribe, share it with your friends, your family, anyone who likes Celtics basketball, or anyone who just likes good basketball talk. We're keeping it casual, keeping it cool.
Yeah, tell your Uber driver, your yacht salesman, your boat salesman, your flying lessons instructor, your scuba diver instructor, your wife, your girlfriend, your wife's girlfriend, your second girlfriend, your cousin twice removed. Someone you meet in a club that you're really not trying to speak to because they smell a bit funky and you just need to move them away from you. At least tell them before they go, yo, go check out the vitamin C's on YouTube. They're fire. Now, please leave me alone. Maybe they need something to watch because you just broke their heart. Until next time, we will be back in a day, maybe 2 days. But until next time, thank you for watching and namaste.
Cheers.